Okay, good morning, guys. I am reading today from My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolt Taylor. I will put the name of the book in the description of the video. This is chapter 8. The previous two videos I had read chapter 7, so today I'm going to read chapter 8. I experienced people as concentrated packages of energy. Doctors and nurses were massive conglomerations of powerful beams of energy that came and went. I felt rushed by an outer world that did not understand how to communicate with me. Because I could not speak or understand language, I sat silently on the sideline of life. I wish I had $1 for every time I was given a neurological exam in that first 48 hours. Folks buzzed in, probed, prodded, and repeatedly sought neurological information. My energy was drained by these ongoing activities. I would have appreciated it if they would have consolidated their efforts and shared the information. And anybody who's been in a hospital knows how you are unable to get any kind of rest in there. All the doctors coming in and out and just, constantly testing and plugging and beeping and everything else. It's not conducive to your healing. The sooner you can get out of an emergency hospital, the better you are. You can actually start your healing. The only job they have in the emergency room is to make sure to keep you alive. It's not a part of the healing process. With this shift into my right hemisphere, I became empathic to what others felt. Although I could not understand the words they spoke, I could read volumes from their facial expression and body language. I paid very close attention to how energy dynamics affected me. I realized that some people brought me energy while others took it away. One nurse was very attentive to my needs. Was I warm enough? Did I need water? Was I in pain? Naturally, I felt safe in her care. She made eye contact and was clearly providing me with a healing space. A different nurse, who never made eye contact, shuffled her feet as though she were in pain. This woman brought me a tray with milk and jello, but neglected to realize that my hands and fingers could not open the containers. I desperately wanted to consume something, but she was oblivious to my needs. So there's a lot in here. The first part, the first nurse, obviously, she had that human contact. That woman obviously had empathy for her, that transference of positive energy and healing energy that she was giving her. The second nurse, was there just as a job. She looked at her no more than a product in a store. Just a part of her job that she had to do, and she could feel that energy, and it drained her. And then I also wanted to touch on how she says, I desperately wanted to consume something. So again, this woman was forced into her healing process. This was not a journey of hers that was undertaken due to wanting to change her life and realizing there was more to life than this physical aspect. So she never processed and never faced the fact that why did she desperately want to consume something? Because she was in pain, because she wanted to take her mind off of the pain. So she didn't want to consume something to heal. It wasn't part of the healing process. She wanted to consume something to take away her mind away from the pain and distract her from what was going on. Something new. So she wanted something. It was part of her old programming that would make her feel comfortable. So that's a very important point to point out right here, because she just glosses over it like it's so normal to just consume. No, when an animal gets hurt, any animal, when they get hurt, they go off by themselves in the woods and they don't eat or drink anything, because they know, their biology knows that they need to not consume anything, that their digestion, they need to put no energy into digestion. All that energy needs to be utilized in healing whatever is wrong, whether it's a leg, a broken leg, whatever it might be. So animals know instinctively that they don't need that sustenance, so to speak, to put something in their mouth. They need to lay down, relax, rest, and heal. Allow their body the energy to heal. As soon as you put something in your mouth, 70% of your body's energy is going towards digestion. And with most of us eating all day long, every 2 hours, throwing something in our freaking mouths, every 2 hours, our body is constantly, it is being overwhelmed and just bogged down with having to try to digest, utilize energy for digestion. When we have all these other aches, pains, and undealt with trauma and abuse from our life that we just keep on putting band-aids on, that we give our bodies no time to heal. So, again, that was the only part of the book that she even mentions eating like this. But she says, I desperately wanted to consume something. But she was oblivious to my needs, speaking about the nurse who was just a nurse as a job. She raised her voice when she spoke to me, not realizing that I wasn't deaf. Under the circumstances, her lack of willingness to connect with me scared me. I did not feel safe in her care. Again, this goes back to being a child, a baby, a newborn, under your parents' care. If that parent is not being anything but loving, if they're rushing you, if they're getting frustrated, if they're all of that, the child can feel all of that, is sensing all of that. And they're scared. They don't feel safe. And, so when you're teaching them how to eat, and you're teaching them how to sleep, and you're teaching them how to not need human contact, and you're putting them in a bouncy chair in front of a TV all day long, and you get pissed off when they cry and they want your attention, you got to understand that the only thing this child wants is that human contact. And because of your own enslavement, because of your unhealed trauma and abuse, and in your programming of growing up in these abusive, toxic systems of governance and social status and order, that in culture, that you are immune, so to say, like you don't even recognize. You are, the word escapes me right now, but you are unable to feel the importance of the human contact, and that in the fact that, this child needs nothing other than you and your acceptance and your comfort and your love and your safety. It doesn't need you to teach it anything. It doesn't need you to force things down its throat. It doesn't need you to force things in its face and its eyes and its ears. Anyways, I got off track there, but this is the important part. Just in 6 sentences there, she glossed over a whole part of the healing process, the true healing process, in the recognition and acceptance of the enslavement into which we're born, and why everything's so toxic, and why we feel like we need to consume something when we're hurt. It's not natural. That is a program. Think about when you were a child, and every time you weren't feeling good, your parents or whoever would be like, oh, eat this. This will make you feel better. Eat here. Take some of this. This will make you better. Here, have this warm cocoa. That'll make you feel better. Why? Because it distracts you from the shit that you're dealing with. Instead of you facing that shit and facing those problems and working through it, you are dopamine hitting. You are taking your body's energy away. When we feel diseased, not at ease, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for cancer. There's a reason for all these health issues. It's our body's system, our body's biological, amazing system of letting us know that there's something wrong in our environment, in our culture, and that we need to change. We need to make a change. And instead of making a change, we cover it up with these Band-Aids, these quick dopamine hits, whether it be these poisonous toxic pills, whether it be the food, the processed bullshit poisons that we consume, whether that be coffee, whether it be whatever, anything. Or just trying to distract ourselves with music, or going and hanging out with friends, or whatever it might be, anything to distract us from taking care of our issues and solving our problems. And the reason we don't want to do that is because they made us feel insignificant since day one. Your parents told you that you were nothing, that you didn't know how to eat, sleep, drink, or be alone, that you were worthless, and you needed to attain. You need to learn how to read, write, talk. You need to learn how to stand. You need to learn how to walk and crawl. You need to learn how to pick things up. You need to learn how to recognize things. So it was always everybody coming to you out of the perspective of you don't know anything and you need to be taught, when really we were born whole. It's all poisonous. And then you're thrown in at 5 years old into these toxic indoctrination centers till the age of 18, where you're tested for compliance. Dr. David Greer was a kind and gentle young man. He was genuinely, she's talking about her main physician in the emergency room. He was genuinely sympathetic to my situation and took the time to pause during his busy routine to lean down near my face and speak softly to me. He touched my arm to reassure me that I would be okay. Although I could not understand his words, it was clear to me that Dr. Greer was watching over me. He understood that I was not stupid, but that I was impaired. He treated me with respect. I'll always be grateful for his kindness. So again, she couldn't even, the left side of her brain had shut down. She couldn't understand the language. She couldn't understand anything verbally, but she could feel all emotions. Everything was crystal clear to her, like she could understand language. So she could understand beyond language, because the one nurse, the second nurse who was not empathetic towards her situation and just treating her as part of her job, she could, even though that woman was asking, do you need anything? She could feel beyond that. So again, it comes back to the virtue signaling. Oh, I'm a nurse. I take care of people. I do this. I do that. And you hold your, oh, look at me. Look what I do. In your virtue signaling, because you just treat it as a well-paying job and not truly caring for these patients, for these people under your care. You're just, making your money and clocking in and clocking out every day. So again, that comes back to the whole virtue signaling of this whole construct, this social construct, this cultural construct in which we live. On that first day, my condition progressed and improved rapidly in some areas, but not at all in others. Although recovery would take years, certain parts of my brain were still intact and eagerly engaged in trying to decipher the billions of bits of data making up the present moment. The most notable difference between my pre- and post-stroke cognitive experience was the dramatic silence that had taken up residency in my head. And I find this interesting. The most notable difference between my pre- and post-stroke cognitive experience was the dramatic silence that had taken up residency in my head. That is a peace. Like, she didn't have all that chatter, right? She didn't have all that stuff going on in her head because her left side got shut down. That side that is trying to constantly keep up and virtue signal and, fit into society and all that. It was gone. All that worry, all that strife, all that, being everywhere except for present, being and doing everything except for being, just being. And that's what I find so amazing is like, this whole construct was set up to build on the ego in the left hemisphere of the brain and not allowing us to just be. And when we are allowed to just be, we have that quietness inside our head, and with her, it came because she didn't have to work through her childhood trauma and abuse. She didn't have to work through, the recognizing and accepting of how toxic and sick our society was. She didn't have to do all this, hard work to silence those voices in her head. She was able to, because that left hemisphere got shut off, she was able to immediately, like a light switch, turn off those things inside her head. Now, whereas with me, with my brain injuries, every time I go through a brain injury, it was like a hurricane inside my brain. Not only was I having all these thoughts and all those voices talking to me in my head, but instead of being able to make sense of any of it, it was like a hurricane of those thoughts and words just spinning in my brain, and it was like unbearable. It wasn't that I could not think anymore. I just didn't think in the same way. So she wasn't retarded. She wasn't stupid. It was that she just didn't think in the same way. Communication with the external world was out. Language with linear processing was out. But thinking in pictures was in. Gathering glimpses of information moment by moment and then taking time to ponder the experience was in. Taking the time to ponder the experience. One of my doctors asked me the question, who is the President of the United States? In order for me to process this question and come up with an answer, I had to first realize that a question was being asked of me. Once I realized someone wanted my attention, I needed them to repeat the question so I could focus on the sounds being spoken. And then I had to pay really close attention to the movement of their lips. Because it was very difficult for my ears to distinguish a single voice from background noise, I needed the question to be repeated slowly and enunciated clearly. I needed calm, clear communication. I may have had a dense expression on my face and appeared ignorant, but my mind was very busy concentrating on the acquisition of new information. My responses came slowly, much too slowly for the real world. We live in such a hectic, crazy environment, guys, that it's unnatural to our biological processes. It's completely unnatural. Now you can sit here and say, oh, well, it's because her left side of her brain was shut down. That's the only reason why. No, this is the stresses we are under on the day-to-day basis, and the go, and the constant onslaught of, if you work at a job and you work inside and they got music playing all day in the background, so you got that going all day in the background. You got the voices and noises of everybody. You got the requests. You got the questions. You got the your own trying to keep up with your responsibilities of your job. And then you got to go home, and then you got to cook, and you're thinking about this, you're thinking about that, you're planning this, you're planning that. If you got family that you're taking care of, you got to think about it. This is so unnatural, guys. Everything about this life is unnatural. And it's like that on purpose, to keep us busy, to keep us in the loop, to keep us consuming, to keep us so busy that we're just, all we have time for is to just work and consume, work and consume, work and consume, work and consume. Paying attention to what someone was saying took an enormous amount of effort, and I found it to be tiring. First, I had to pay attention with my eyes and ears, neither of which were working normally. My brain had to capture the sound and then match that sound up with a specific lip movement. Then it had to search and see if there was any meaning for those combinations of sounds stored anywhere in my wounded brain. Once I got one word figured out, then I had to search for combinations of words. And with an impaired mind, that took hours. The effort it took for me to pay attention to what someone was saying was like the effort it takes to pay attention to someone who is speaking on a cell phone with a bad connection. You have to work so hard to hear what the person is saying that you may become impatient, frustrated, and hang up the phone. That's the kind of effort it took for me to hear a voice in a noisy background. It took a tremendous amount of willingness and determination on my part, and infinite patience on the part of the speaker. Again, going back to being a baby and at the whim of your parents, and it takes a ton of patience and effort, a ton of patience on the parents' part and a ton of effort on your part. And again, language, from what I can see, is all a construct to trap us. Again, the parents feeling like they need to teach you how to speak, and, spending all that effort when, you should be spending those precious first moments of life in that first year or two. You should be spending that not on taking so much time to learn how to speak and learn how to eat toxic poisons, but on connection with another person who is there just because they love you, with no expectation for you to have to, strain your brain to learn to speak a language that only, that you cannot appropriately articulate what you are experiencing through that language. Even as an adult, we are still unable to articulate properly. in language how we are feeling. So, to me, it is an obviously construct, that is just another part of the enslavement process that is set forth in this physical existence. For my information processing, I took the sounds of the keywords and repeated them over and over again in my brain so that I would not forget what they sounded like. Then I would go on a process of exploration to identify a meaning that matched the sound of those words. President? President? What is a president? What does that mean? Once I had a concept, a picture of what a president was, then I moved on to the United States. United States? United States? What is the United States? What does that mean? Once I found the file for United States, again it was a picture in my mind. Then I had to put together the two images, that of a president and that of the United States. But my doctor was not asking me anything that was really about the United States or about a president. He was asking me to identify a specific man, and that was a completely different file. Because my brain could not get from president in United States to Bill Clinton, I gave up, but only after hours of probing and exhausting mental gymnastics. And I've notated in here, this is an example of how all the superfluous information clogs our being. Again, the rhetoric and the expectations of constantly having to keep all this information and have it at a moment's notice to recall all this stupid, ridiculous, nonsensical, superfluous, extraneous information is all part of the construct to keep us away from being, from just being. It's all an expectation, and we have so much stress and so much trauma from trying to live up to these ridiculous expectations of fitting in to our box, and then that in our box, making our box in ourselves being able to fit in to the node in society. Like, it's just so ridiculous. It's a complete construct. It's all bullshit. None of it's good for you. It's all complete fallacy. It's all an illusion. It's all made up. We're living out a narration. And that's why we're so diseased, not at ease, sick. My ability to cognate was erroneously assessed by how quickly I could recall information, rather than by how my mind strategized to recover the information it held. After all the effort I had put into the task of trying to find the answer to the initial question, it ended up that there were too many associations for me to pick through. Since I was thinking in pictures, I had to start with a single image and then explore